Oklahoma. We're coming to you from our secret location somewhere around Ada, America, and we're pretty easy to find if you want to find us. We're being brought to you today by True Medics. True Medics is our brand. It's how we provide you with herbal supplements, and you can find those at truemedics.com. We operate a daily clinic at Neighborly Nutrition, and that's located in Ada, America. And we kind of operate, let's say, globally under the hashtag treat the cause, because we really do feel like we're onto the cause of a lot of human problems and human function problems, including obesity. So today we're going to talk about obesity. This is a huge problem. And again, if you are overweight, if you suffer from this problem, I have suffered from this problem when I was a kid. It's hard, and you're judged, and you try and you work on it, and nothing works, and people just judge you. So it's horrible. It is a tough thing to live with. And at some point you just give up, and you say, oh, well, people just, they think I eat too much, so I'll just eat too much, right? And it really, you kind of have different energy demands because you're larger, and you need to eat more, right? So that's kind of what happens. It's kind of a big, horrible catch-22 circle. But we're going to talk about it because, again, obesity really doesn't have to do with eating. It kind of does in the pathology, and we'll talk about that, after it kind of gets going. But what happens it's not really eating, okay? And we'll talk about it. It's eating frequency. That's absolutely what it is, but it really is not how much you eat. You can eat, I can feed you things and you will gain weight, I guarantee you that. And so you can eat, bad things, but we kind of all know what those are. And guess what? I eat more sugar than I should. But things like ice cream are, unless you're making it yourself and using natural ingredients, are kind of really bad things. So we'll kind of talk about some of this over the course of the whole talk here. Okay, so just first, right, to start off. So let's dive right in. But to start off with, what is obesity? And let's just kind of go to the Google machine here. So overview: overweight and obesity are defined as abnormal or excessive fat accumulations that present a risk to health. Okay. A body mass index, BMI, over 25 is considered overweight. Now, most of us don't know what our BMI is, but I guarantee if you get on a scale and you're like most of us, your BMI is going to be 25 or over. I'm pretty close to 25, and I'm, intermittent fast and all that. So, that, again, is this a good gauge? I don't know. But I'm just trying to get a look at the definition, right? Because, again, if you go into your physician and you are over 25, again, you're going to get diagnosed, and this is a disease state, okay? So it's something that you should be aware of. What is the cause of obesity? So this is great. And again, I don't feel this way at all. This is just, I think, horrible judgment, okay? And we'll get into why I don't feel this way in just a second. But obesity is generally caused by eating too much and moving too little. So you eat too much and don't exercise. You're lazy and don't exercise. Well, golly, come on now. I know a lot of people who struggle with weight who completely try to, diet right. And again, we're going to talk a lot about that in a second. And exercise a lot, and they still struggle with weight, right? And again, at some point, you just give up, So, but don't give up yet, because again, I've got some great hope for you here, I think. So hang in there, my friends. All right, so let's talk a little bit about a bear, because we can learn a lot from a bear, and we're going to talk a lot about and again, don't let this word scare you, because it doesn't mean eating less, okay? So, but fasting. So we're going to talk about intermittent fasting quite a bit through this. And again, it doesn't mean eating less, okay? So we're going to talk that through. Because let's talk about what a bear does, all right? And this is super important. So this is a story about Holly the bear, and I use Holly the bear a lot in my examples because Holly is a pretty important example because a bear controls its weight. Now, we think, oh, well, yeah, Chip, if you cause me to fast all winter, I'm going to get really skinny. And you will. And you'll come out of the cave healthy. But we're not going to that side of the equation. We want to go to the other side of the equation. So when a bear does basically come out of its cave in the spring, it's a super hungry bear, right? So it hasn't eaten all spring, so it's super hungry. Guess how many hours a day that bear eats? And most people say, well, Chip eats for 24 hours, or eats for 20 hours, or eats for a lot of hours a day because that is one hungry bear. No, he doesn't. That bear eats for 4 hours a day. And in that 4 hours, he may eat a whole lot. I mean, he may eat, 10,000 calories of fish, but he only eats in 4 hours, or she, and then they'll stop. Holly is a she, so she only eats in 4 hours, and so then she'll stop. And she does that because she wants to kind of maintain leanness. So she gets a little bit more buff than her picture there over there on the left. But by the end of the summer, bears don't look like the picture on the right at the end of the summer at all. They are all muscular bears. They're big, muscular, buff-looking bears, but they only eat for 4 hours a day. They maintain that behavior all through the spring and all through the summer, okay? 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day, 4 hours a day. Why? In order to maintain leanness. It doesn't matter how many calories they eat. It doesn't matter if they're eating salmon or berries or whatever. 4 hours a day. When Holly wants to look like the bear on the right, when she's getting ready to go into that cave for the winter, she wants to put on a lot of weight. What does she do? All she does is she changes her eating behavior. She absolutely does not eat more. She probably eats less. But what she does is she eats in a 20-hour window. When you eat in a 20-hour window, and we'll talk this through as to what these metabolic processes are, you're going to store fat and put on weight. What's a 20-hour eating window? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack before bed, energy drink in between. Okay, what's a 4-hour window? I start eating at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and I quit eating at 8 p.m. in the afternoon. That's what I do. Cindy and I eat in a 4-hour window, and I start at 4 p.m. and I end at 8 p.m. I might eat a lot, and I did yesterday. I almost ate 2 full meals yesterday in my 4-hour window, right? So I might eat a whole lot because I was really hungry yesterday. I only eat in 4 hours. And so that's going to maintain leanness. So I'm going to look like Holly I'm going to look hopefully like a buffer version of Holly on the left. That's Holly right after she came out of her cave. But we don't want to look like Holly on the right, okay? So we're going to talk about this though. And again, this is the whole principle behind intermittent fasting. We want to be like spring bears, not fall bears, okay? And most of us are like fall bears now. We eat in that 20-hour window. We want to be like a spring bear, and we want to eat in a 4-hour window. So why is this, and what are kind of the underlying principles here? Now, it's really funny when you guys go research this. This is stuff they really don't want you to know, okay? They really don't want you to know what I'm trying to teach you right now. And you can find this because everything is all about, sugar, glucose processing, and energy is, provided by glucose. And you'll see when I kind of get into ATP and we talk about ATP, how they talk about glucose, okay, and kind of hide this fact or try to, at least, basically, confuse these facts, okay? But facts are facts and truth is truth, so you can't get around that. So what happens in the fed and fasting state? Now, this is a way to say this, but I'll explain this in a second. So in a fed state, so that's when you've just eaten, glucose enters your liver cells, hepatocytes, via GLUT2 and is phosphorylated by glucokinase and used to synthesize gluconeogen by gluconeogen synthesis. So you're storing, what that means is you're storing gluconeogen. In a fasted state, gluconeogen is hydrolyzed by glucogen phosphorase to generate glucose. So again, it's all about sugar, and why, do we need to talk about, why do we need to talk about it in a sugar way? Because it's really more about fats. It's really more about you burning fats, okay? So let's look at, and again, I'm just telling you this because as you go research, you're gonna find all this stuff about glucose. Now, what happens in fasting and fed is basically this switch between glucose and fat processing. And we want to be processing fat. And there's reasons for that, which we'll get into. So Holly the bear, what Holly the bear knows is if I just eat in a 4-hour window, I stay in a fasted state most of the day and I am burning fat almost all day. If I'm in this 20-hour window, I stay in a fed state all day and I'm storing fat. I'm telling my body to store fat. That's what a bear does. If you do that, you will tell your body to store fat. And most of us behave that way. And why? Because the dang USDA food pyramid tells us to behave that way, which needs to be updated, don't you think? Yeah, so again, if you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're basically, killing yourself might be too strong of a word, but you're dropping your immune system. You're being less efficient. You're not being all that you could be by any means. So, okay, so let's talk about ATP. Now, this is really interesting, and this is when you get into some, let's say, sleight of hand that will need some explanation. But, I don't know why whoever they are, but, want us to sort of be in this fed state all the time and be sort of eating, sugar and all this sugary stuff. The only possible explanation is that they want us to not have an immune system. They want us to be sick because that's what happens when you go into a fed state, you drop your immune system because of energy. And we're going to talk that through. Okay, so what happens? How do you produce energy? All right. So a cell will produce energy. Any cell will run on glucose. You drop glucose on dirt, and the cells in the dirt will run on the glucose. Okay. So every cell will run on glucose. So glucose is the default. Efficient. It is like running your car on, some, combination of alcohol and sugar, right? So it's super inefficient. It is not how we want to run, and a cell cannot be all that it is if it's running on glucose, okay? Our cells really want to run on fat, all right? Some cells will run on light. Again, that's, you have cells that will run on light. It's a little too woohoo for most people. We'll leave that there. But we all know that plants, have cells that run on light, right? But we want to run on fat. And so that's what Holly the bear knows. And that's why Holly the bear eats in a 4-hour window, is because she wants her body burning fat, not storing fat, okay? So this is really interesting. And I just want to read this to you because I want you to see the sleight of hand. Because here's the bottom line right here. So does glucose produce 2 ATP? Glucolysis produces only 2 net molecules of ATP per 1 molecule of glucose. That is the bottom line, boys and girls. But why do we come up here and we say in a eukaryotic cell, the process of cellular respiration, which is what we'll talk about in a second, but they don't want you to know that, can metabolize 1 molecule of glucose to 30 to 32 ATP? Well, it's not 1 to 2. Why the sleight of hand here? Because it's very simple what happens. So again, glucose is a 1 to 2. Fat is a little bit more complicated because it kind of depends on how many turns it takes, okay? Now again, this is mitochondrial beta oxidation yields 4 ATP equivalents per round of oxidation. That's true, but it's very misleading. It makes you think that there's only 4 units of ATP produced for beta oxidation. That's not true. Look down here. How many ATPs can be generated from beta oxidation of palmitic, and that's saturated fat, which is how most of us do this, acid. So total ATP produced are 131. But it takes 2, costs you 2, the glucose. Everything sort of has to start with that glucose molecule because we developed from that basis, but it takes 2 for the glucose. You got to subtract off 2. 129, okay? I say 50 times more efficient when you're beta oxidizing all the time, but it's, according to this, it's actually 63 times more, 64 times more. Okay, so this is pretty important. That what this means is that when we eat, and for roughly 5 hours after we eat, we go in glucose mode. So we're a 1 to 2 exercise here. So you're producing, for every 1 unit of sugar of glucose, you're producing 2 units of energy. All right. And that's not real efficient. You're functioning. And why do we do this? Because we have to deal with the fat. When you eat, we're storing fat. We're storing the fat. And that takes a lot of energy to analyze the fat, to build triglycerides, and to store the fat. Okay? We do that 5 hours, 5 hours. But after that 5 hours, we flip a switch called AMPK and we start burning fat. And when we start burning fat, again, we're 60 times more efficient. We're up here at 129 ATP instead of 2. Okay? Now, what does it cost us? Energetically, it's like, wow, Chip, that's a lot. Well, what happens when I eat? What else do I lose? You lose your immune system. Okay? You lose your immune system. Now, if you're already, let's say, somewhat overweight, you're going to have, it's like a loop. You're going to have more energy demands. You're going to have sort of more, potentially more hunger cravings, let's say, that you're going to have to overcome. And the bigger you get, the worse that is going to get, okay? Because, again, if your cells get used to glucose, it's like crack cocaine, okay? So and again, if you give yourself, let's say, processed sugar, it's even more like crack cocaine. So if you're dumping a bunch of glucose in the system, cells, they're going to run on it. That's their default, right? They're going to, begin to try to use it to beta oxidize. But again, if you're never burning fat, you never get there. So you just are awash in glucose. Insulin and diabetes is really associated with that. So again, if you're always in a fed state, you're basically always trying to insulin signal to pick up glucose. And if you're awash in glucose, you lose your insulin signaling because you don't need it anymore. You got so much glucose. And that is just a logical conclusion from what I'm seeing as to how you work. Okay, so well, first of all, God is a perfect engineer. God built each and every one of us perfect. And he built us in such a way that every cell inside of us is always striving toward perfect. All right? So as perfect as we can be around our DNA. And again, your DNA is not what you think it is. So it's pretty perfect as it is. So we're always striving toward that perfect. And every cell inside of us is always clawing toward health. If it gets sick, if it gets infected, if it gets traumatized, it dies, divides, forms a new self, and that guy climbs toward perfect health. So the fact that we do this instead of this is interesting, and we definitely do that when we become overweight. First of all, we shouldn't be overweight, and again, that's probably more, that's a bigger kind of thing than just this, but I'll talk you through this again because that's almost like a spiritual thing and tied to our eating, and do we really need to eat food? Can we sort of get our nutrients another way? And there's so much there that I have to teach you guys down the road, but we're not quite ready for that yet. So sorry to sort of hedge on that one. But we're going to talk this through on more of a, let's say, physical realm right now. And so what does that look like? Well, I just sort of typed in Google parasites that cause weight gain, and just right off the bat, unpleasant side effects of tapeworm infection, weight gain while infected, as a tapeworm can increase appetite and increase craving for carbohydrates. So can these guys cause you to crave more carbohydrates? Yes, because that's what they eat. And again, the bugs, and this is a tapeworm, but you can see down here, a person infected with Toxoplasma gondii would experience significantly increased T cell activity. Yeah, because we're trying to kill the Toxoplasma gondii, leading to chronic inflammation. Researchers say this inflammation is the link between parasites and incidence of obesity. So it doesn't matter if it's Toxoplasma gondii or E. coli or H. pylori or Epstein-Barr virus or HPV or any of these things that we're infected with. The stuff that causes us inflammation can link and be caused or be tied to obesity. Okay? Are there parasites that make you feel bloated? Giardia. I see this guy in everybody. Okay, he's very prevalent. He's in a lot of folks. Is he the cause of obesity? No. It's all of this together. Okay, here's another guy that can cause obesity, and Candida is a fungus, and Candida has the ability to basically alter our fat processing, so how we're processing fats, and alter our metabolism. So again, if you can't process fats and you're eating a lot, your body's trying to store everything that you're eating as fats, and you can't process them, you're going to gain weight. It's just you don't have any way to eliminate fat. Hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully this is making sense. Okay, so the fasting fed thing, this is super important. Again, part of getting kind of control of our weight is, going to be what we eat, definitely. But this fasting fed is super important. Again, I'm not saying you need to quit eating. You can eat as much as you want in your eating window. You just need to get an eating window. Because when you get an eating window, you will then have an immune system. Right now, most of us, so Holly the bear, when she's in fall mode, when she's eating 20 hours a day, she honestly doesn't have much of an immune system. She is relying on sort of the resources that she built up in those 4-hour windows and the efficiency of her body as she was eating in 4-hour windows to sustain her. And bears are kind of have that built into them. You don't, though, in your immune system. So again, when we're in a fasted state, meaning it's just been 5 hours since our last meal, then our shields come up. Okay, and I like to use this concept of Star Trek because we all kind of get an understanding of shields and what that means, if you're on the Starship Enterprise, right? So you don't want to fly into the Klingons with your shields down, right? If you do, you're going to take dents and dings. The Klingons are going to get you, and they're going to damage your ship. But if we fly into the Klingons with our shields up, we can defend ourselves, and we don't really even, depends on if we want to fight back or not. We don't even really care if the Klingons are there or not because they can't really get to us. They can't really hurt us. We've been taught differently in this, right? So we've been taught that we need masks and that, oh my gosh, I might get, I can't be around somebody with the flu because I'll get the flu. Can't be around somebody with, some horrible, thing because I might get that horrible thing. Boys and girls, I'm around people with horrible stuff every single day. Believe me, I see so many interesting things. And again, I haven't gotten any of them because I'm flying into the Klingons with my shields up. Now, I wouldn't go eat a meal and see somebody. So, there you go, because I have my shields down, right? So I don't eat until after we're kind of done dealing with people. It's interesting that, what do we do when we all get together socially? We eat, and when we eat, again, we basically all drop our shields. Let's all share our parasites. And that's kind of what we do, which is interesting behavior. So we'll get this figured out. Again, we need kind of some things to happen, and they're going to happen, I think. And as, let's say, the institutions fall, this information is going to be, we'll build around this information, I think. Okay, so this is just natural products that can help with basically obesity. So, if you are overweight, are there natural products that you can take that will help you? Yes. And why? Again, because it's, likely parasitic, again, and it's metabolic. So obesity is really two things. It can be metabolic, which is this fasting fed, and we can do that to ourselves by behavior, right? So if you're like Holly the fall bear, again, you don't want to be like Holly the fall bear because you're going to gain weight. If you're like Holly the spring bear, where you're only eating in a 4-hour window, that's where we want to be because we will basically manage our weight a lot better. And if you can do that, again, you will never, ever, 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 ever have to worry about your weight again. You'll have mastery over your weight. And that's a very empowering feeling, okay? So, and you can do that with fasting and fed, but you also have to make sure that you don't have any parasites that are sort of helping you along because it will make the journey harder because these guys are going to make you hungry. They're going to make you hungry. They can't make you hungry, but they're going to make you think you need food, let's say. They're going to make you think that you need nutrients because they need nutrients, okay? So natural products will help with, they'll help with basically improving metabolic function. They'll help with the state of the cell. They'll help sort of give health to the cell, but they'll also help with any pathogens, that you might have that might be causing actually the cause of, overeating and that whole loop. Okay. But turmeric is always a good one because of the curcumin in it. Again, 15.9% reduction in body weight gain, 31.3 reduction in origin, white adipose tissue gain, which we're going to talk about in just a second, white and brown adipose tissue. Berberine, so we all know kind of about berberine is a very, very good thing. You can get berberine isolates now. Again, reduction in body weight, reduction in organ, white adipose tissue weight. White adipose tissue is something, if you study health, we don't really want, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Again, capsaicin is chili pepper, right? And 8% reduction in body weight, reduction in white adipose tissue weight, and adipocyte sizes. Okay, so what is about this white adipose tissue, and what is that all about? Well, you have two types of fat, okay? So we have white fat and we have brown fat. Now, what Holly is doing, so when we go back to Holly, so what Holly is doing all through the spring and the summer is she is really modeling by her eating behavior 4 hours, and then she eats a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. So by eating a lot of omega-3s and eating in that 4 hour window, she's really, really promoting her health. But what she's also doing is she is modeling her fat. She's building a lot of brown adipose tissue. And brown adipose tissue is energetic, so it has a lot of mitochondria, and it is fat burning. So you want a lot, if you want to be like in really good physical shape, you want a lot of brown, not white adipose tissue. So we really want to promote the browning of our fat, and that will help us energetically. It helps us deal with energy better. But if we so what Holly does, basically when she changes those, so now, by the end of the summer, she's got her fat modeled. So she's got a lot of brown adipose tissue. When she changes her eating behavior and starts eating in the 20-hour window and starts putting on weight, she is only adding white adipose tissue. And this is what most of us do now because we eat in this 18-hour, whatever it is, window, and we're pumping on the white adipose tissue. White adipose tissue is, we want brown, not white. White should be our thermal layer, and that's about it. And what we're using basically for energy as our quick energy, and that's about it. And that's why Holly needs it, because she needs to protect herself from the cold all through the winter, and she also needs quick energy. So she's going to burn off all that saturated fat in her white adipose tissue all through the winter because it's not helping her any. But what's really sort of saving her, keeping her warm and everything is the brown fat. Okay, so the brown fat is what's thermal insulating her. It's what's giving her energy, but she's using the white fat as fuel, as a fuel source. Very important concept. Hopefully you guys got that. But so here's an easier way to say it. If we're sitting around eating a bunch of ice cream and eating in a 20-hour window, then you're going to gain weight. That weight that you gain will be white fat. It will be energy ready fat, but it will be fat that you don't really want, that's not doing you any good. If you're eating more intermittent fasting wise, if you're eating in a window and you're eating a lot of omega-3s, because it takes omega-3s to brown fat, then you're browning your fat. And again, brown fat is going to promote leanness. It's going to sort of help your overall thing. So we kind of have this, let's say, situation, almost a mobile situation, and you kind of get in a loop over here with overweight and obesity. And as we begin to come out of that loop, we want to create another loop over here that's healthy with the brown adipose tissue and the right fats and all that. So hopefully making sense, but there you go. All right. So, and again, brown adipose tissue is what will actually synthesize omega-3s in culture. So that's really interesting that happens. But it just, a lot of our, you just want brown, we want brown fat. And again, the way that we promote that, the easiest way to promote that is just eating in about a, 4, 6, 8 hour window. You can eat in an 8 hour window and still be intermittent fasting. It's the more that you narrow that window, the better. Most people start in an 8-hour window. And the reason that they start in an 8-hour window is it's pretty easy to skip breakfast, right? Now you can't put coffee you can't put coffee in your creamer. Can't put creamer in your coffee. You can't put sugar in your coffee. You can't eat more than 50 calories or you're breaking your fast. So, it changes some behavior sometimes in the morning. But, if you can drink your coffee, stevia is okay to drink. So if you like sweet, stevia is great. Stevia will not break your fast. You can put stevia in your coffee or tea or whatever. But again, if you can just drink liquids, up to noon. At noon, eat a giant lunch. Eat all day. It doesn't really matter, but just quit eating at 8 o'clock. So that is the kind of easiest way to start with intermittent fasting. And again, you don't have to restrict your eating at all. Do pay attention to the amount of sugar and high fructose corn syrup that you're consuming, because those will hurt you, not help you, right? And there's other ways to get good sugar. You can, eat a banana, right? Or there's coconut sugar's good, date sugar's good, maple syrup's good, honey's good. So there's lots of ways to get sweet that are not CNH pure cane sugar or derivatives of. So anyway, there you go. Let's see. Oh, well, I did something on high fructose corn syrup. So I would also, if you are kind of working on this and you're starting an intermittent fast, again, a guy that will hurt you is high fructose corn syrup. I would encourage you all to look at labels, look at things, and avoid things with high fructose or any kind of corn syrup. Corn syrup or high fructose corn syrup is horrible. And just look at this. Studies show, and I mean not just one, a lot of studies, high fructose corn syrup increases your appetite, one, and promotes obesity more than regular sugar, okay? So if you like ice cream, sadly, most ice cream is made with a lot of high fructose corn syrup. It's in a lot of stuff, so just start reading labels. You'll be shocked at how much stuff it's in. Anyway, let's leave it there, boys and girls. So hopefully this has been beneficial. If you are overweight and you need help with that, and you want somebody to kind of coach you through that, that's kind of what we do here at Neighborly Nutrition. We can put you on the bioresonance machine, and we can, although it's a non-medical device, it does give indications of things, and we can see what's up and what might be going on bacterially or pathogenically with you. So come on in, we can help you a lot here, and we're only a phone call away as well if you're not near us. See you guys, love you guys.